Welcome to Monday and Tao of the Day. That's right, it's time to talk about the Tao. What are we going to find today? What magic does the Tao have for us, and what are we going to do with it? I am your host, Martin John, and every weekday I come on in the morning at some point, Central Time, and talk about the Tao. What I ask of you is to join me, pick a number between 1 and 81, and we will read your Tao for the day. The Tao translates as the canon of reason, and it is all about living a reasonable life with others and in nature. The Tao is kind of like the universe or God, or however you want to put it, however you want to describe it. It is all things. It is where everything emanates from and everything returns. So the Tao Te Ching, being like the universe of reason, the whole of everything resides in the Tao. And we are here for you to come pick a number between 1 and 81, and I would be happy to read that out for you. With nobody coming on at the moment, I'm going to pick a number. I'm going to pick number 1. I don't think that anybody has picked one. I don't think I've read one yet. So we're just going to start with 1. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnamable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet, mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. So this is the first verse or first chapter of the Tao. And it's a big one. This is something that means so much to me. And I'm getting emotional right now, and I really don't know why. I can't even tell you why this is making me emotional, but it is, and I wanna go through this. If anybody has a number for me, definitely join me and we can talk about your Tao for the day. But mine starts with the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. And this is so important. It's so important to understand that if you can express it, that's not it. I don't care what you're talking about, even if you're talking about a wall, even if you're talking about anything. But we're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about people. We're going to talk about God. We're going to be talking about all of these kind of big ideas. The Bible is a big book. I'll give you that. It's got a lot of pages, got a lot of words, print is small, like all sorts of stuff. But if you were to say, like the God that can be told, the God that can be explained, the God that can be described is not the eternal God. If you can wrap your mind around that idea that like that God that is the Tao, right? The Tao, the universe, all of these things. If you can simply describe it, that is not it, son. Like there is no way that you can even me, right? If you were to describe me, you wouldn't get me, right? If you were to try and just chalk me up to some words or chalk me up to some experience or chalk me up to something like it's true. I had an addiction problem before. I mean, if you were even to just call me, he's a recovering addict, that, and continued to express all of these things, you could ruin your voice before ever even coming close to figuring out or to understanding or to describing that which I am, because everything you would say would limit me, and you would have to make that infinitely more grand and bigger, because I am, and I can't be described. I can't simply be just a collection of words that you happen to know, right? Like there are words that you don't even know that may describe me. And you wouldn't be able to do that without that vocabulary. And maybe those words aren't even, maybe those words haven't even been discovered yet, right? Words are so lacking. A lot of people really love language, and language is great, but it is so lacking in all that is. So the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. And I don't know necessarily what he means here by name. Maybe he's even just talking about the name Tao. Maybe it's like the eternal name. And so the name that can be named is not the eternal name. Like, and the last time the word name is used, it's capitalized. So maybe that is referencing the Tao, but Tao isn't capitalized here in this section of this chapter. So I'm not exactly sure. And it should be said that this is a translation, of course. But my guess is in the translation there were, ways of understanding these things that Stephen Mitchell was able to gather. That's my guess. Whether or not I'm right on that, I have no idea. But the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. So if you can call it something, then it's not it. Right? It is not what you think it is. If you can describe it as something, if you say this is bad, that's not it. Like you're just trying to understand it. And our desire to understand things, we have named everything on the planet, in our experience. We've named things that, we've created names for things that we've experienced. We've created names for things we see. And all of these names, that is not the eternal name for it. That is not what it is. If you say stone, well, that's not what this is. It's not a stone. It's not the eternal of what this is. There's consciousness in here. There's life in here. And I know we like to think of stones as not having life and not being conscious, but they are. We've discovered that. We've discovered that it is made up of things that are living, right? In ways that we don't understand yet, but there is change happening. It's not living in the way that we understand life. It's not going to have children. It doesn't have internal functioning the way we like to think of living things. But if you can name that, if you can just call it stone, well, that's not the eternal name of this. This is something more than that. This is everything that we can touch, everything that we can see deserves to be unnamed, deserves to be what it is right now, and doesn't deserve to be encapsulated into some name, doesn't deserve to be shrunk into something. You deserve the universe as it is, not as you perceive it to be. Everything we call something, everything we have a name for, encloses our perception more, and then we live in a little box. We live in a box. The moment we start to name things, the moment we start to associate something as separate, we start to close ourselves off to the grandness of what we are. So if we separate ourselves from a stone, a tree, another person, then we are limiting not only that thing, but ourselves as well. So here, this is Tao of the Day, and this is chapter 1 of the Tao, one that I have not read yet. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. If you can name anything, then you are just limiting it. The unnamable is the eternally real. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you can go without describing what something is, if you can go without trying to make it something else, make it separate, make it a thing in the world that isn't blessed with you, as part of it, with part of you as part of it. If you separate that thing, it is not eternally real. It is not in your mind. It As soon as you name something, it loses so much of what it is. The unnamable is the eternally real. And if we can avoid naming, then we can touch everything so well. Oh man. Oh man. That's a thing I do now, and I appreciate it. The unnamable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things, right? So once you start naming things, you start separating, you start making things particular. I read one of these verses. I don't recall which one it was, but I was talking about a boat. We were talking about the idea that we allow circumstances to complete us. And when you allow a circumstance to complete you, you are not holding on to a name. I I was talking about this in the realm of and this immediately starts with naming and identifying. Let's create a boat. Right? Let's create something that looks and can act like a boat. You put it in the water and you think, oh, now the boat is complete. Right? We've allowed circumstances to complete the boat. Now that it is floating in the water, now that it is able to, extend itself to the point of being useful. But then if we take that same boat and position it in a way that is interesting and put it in the middle of the desert, the name boat doesn't fit anymore. But it was in the naming of the boat that gave us all of the ideas about what this can be and what this is. This is a really great analogy here because now maybe the boat became a sculpture or the boat became public art, right? Once again, turning to this concept of naming. Now that we have a name for it, we can limit it to its possibilities. I utilize the term boat so you know what to think about. And then we start looking at sculpture, we start looking at public art, we start looking at, whatever we want to call it, but naming limits what it is. Naming immediately starts to put us in the position of having preconceived ideas of what it is this is and what the purpose of this is, and so that we can understand it in our own minds. Why do we want to do that? Because we want purpose, because we're searching for purpose. But the thing is being is our purpose, being here, being present. Once you start to separate things, once you start to describe things, you start to make things good and bad and right and wrong, and all of these things start to get in the way of you being eternally real. Always. Naming is the origin of all particular things. And that's how I see all that, right? Like once you start to name something, you say this is the extent that it can exist. And this is when it will have achieved its potential. The thing is if we didn't name it, its potential would be limitless. It could be anything at any moment. And we wouldn't have to limit it to one thing. And we go back to the beginning where it's like the Tao cannot be told. It is not. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. Once we call it a boat, it ceases to have use when it has a hole in it. And then it's just trash. And that's not true. Right? It is just no longer useful for doing a thing that we expected the boat to do. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have value. That doesn't mean that it can't be of service. It is only not of service in within the naming of it. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Once you can no longer attach yourself to the preconceived ideas that your name and your identity have, you can realize the mystery that is all around you. You can realize the mystery of the world that is around you at all times. And you can be anything and everything, and you can embrace all that you are without having to define what you are, without having to attach yourself to this identity, without having to be something, without having to achieve something. You can just be here now as you are. Oh man. Oh man. That's so beautiful. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestation. And this is the manifestation, people. That is around us all the time. Can you separate yourself from the manifestation? Because the manifestation catches us in desire. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestation. You see only what is physically in front of you. When you caught wanting other people to be more like you, when you're caught in wanting more manifestation, more stuff, more money, more attention, more love, you only see the manifestation. You only can see that which you are receiving within the manifestation, even though the mystery, within the mystery, you are receiving so much more. And there's so much more just on the other side of that veil. And that's where you're at. Free from desire, you realize the mystery that you are, the mystery that life is. And when you're caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. So this is Tao of the Day for anybody that's joining me. Tao of the Day is a place where you can come on, pick a number between 1 and 81, and I will happily read through the Tao with you and run through it line by line so we can understand what the Tao is saying. I'm reading chapter 1 for myself, and if anybody wants to join me, please feel free to just jump in. If you have any comments about this chapter 1, I would love to chat with you about that as well. Yet, mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. See, and this is something that is really interesting to me. This mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. The manifestations, like you manifest things, right? And the mystery is unlike the manifestation. The mystery is the space that the structure, I see the mystery as being the space that the structure of reality creates. So reality is a structure, and it is structured with perceptions and names and all of these things. The mystery is underneath all of that. The mystery is beyond the manifestation. And so the manifestation and the mystery exists without the manifestation as well, but the manifestation is where we are all kind of existing at the moment. And so by understanding that we have created and we are existing within the manifestation, um, but there is mystery that is both above and below the manifestation that we have access to. We can recognize that it arises from the same source. This source is called darkness. Now that's an interesting way of putting it. And I don't know if what he's saying here is the source is called darkness, which is the source is nothing. Like the source is not doing, the source is not being, the source is never, like, the eternal Tao was never born, it says in here somewhere, right? Like, so if you are looking at this idea that it doesn't exist in manifestation, then it exists in darkness. The source is called darkness, and from the darkness comes both mystery and manifestation, and comes all things. That's kind of how I see this, because manifestation is all things, and the mystery is the thing that drives us. Free from desire, you realize the mystery, you realize your connection, you realize your fullness, you realize your potential. Caught in desire, you only see the manifestations being the limits. As we said earlier, when we were talking about naming, the name that can be named isn't the eternal name. And so when you are looking at this space of like manifestations, we see or experience something, and from there we name it. And by naming it, we have limited it to this space of manifestation. And we don't realize the mystery behind it. We don't realize the life behind it. We don't realize the depth. I mean, I don't know how many people have met me and think they understand me and miss so much. I'm not trying to say like, oh, I'm so deep, but I am saying that like how many people have met every single person on this planet and just chalked them up to being something that they are definitely not. That is getting caught in the manifestation. When you're caught in desire, you expect everybody else to be caught in desire as well. This is how you perceive things. Now, when you can free yourself from desire, you realize the mystery, and then you allow everything around you to be what it is without having to name it. And that frees you. That frees you so much from wanting other people, wanting other things. It frees you so much from your grievances. You don't have to be aggrieved anymore because you don't want people to be anything anymore. You want people to be who they are. Yeah, I saw a meme the other day that said angry people um, want to prove their power to you, and happy people or loving people, it was loving people want to prove your power to you, right? Want to show you your power. Angry people want to show you their power. Loving people want to show you your power. So whose power are you out there trying to show? Whose power are you trying to display out there? Are you sure? Like, there's also a line in the Tao that says, those who need to prove their point aren't wise. Wise people don't need to prove their point. People who need to prove their point aren't wise. Like, if you need to prove your point, then you're out there, trying to um, show other people your power. Yet, the mystery and manifestation arise from the same source. You have access to both. The source is called darkness. Now, if you're angry, that could be a dark place. But if you're still and loving, trust me, being loving is a dark place. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. Getting beyond that darkness, getting beyond, Allison's going to join me, getting beyond all of that. It's such a beautiful way to experience how we live. Allison, how are you? Do I gotcha? Uh-oh. Guest has left. Okay, so Allison left. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe something happened. If Allison is still here and you wanted to come on, please do. Maybe I missed it and I didn't see it fast enough. But either way, darkness within darkness, the gateway to understanding. Hmm. Darkness within darkness. Darkness within dark. I'm not exactly sure about that. I may have stumbled upon it already. Yet mystery and manifestation arise from the same source. The source is called darkness. Mystery is dark, and the manifestation is dark as well. So maybe darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. Understanding takes quite a bit. Understanding others, understanding yourself, and understanding that there's no limit. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. And if you want to understand that, you have to recognize that the manifestation, the Tao that can be told, is not the eternal. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. What we try to do is name things within the manifestation, and by naming things within the manifestation, we create this gateway to understanding. Hmm. By naming things, we attempt to understand them. But the name that can be named is not the eternal name. So once we free ourselves, whoa, I think I understand what's going on here. Okay, so it is a path, right? Like, in order for us to be able to free ourselves from desire, we have to first get caught in desire. And we get caught in desire by very simply creating manifestation. Manifestation, we embody by naming that which we experience. So then we subjugate the manifestation to a smaller experience. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. So God isn't what we can express, and the things around us aren't what we can call them. It's much more than that, and we are much more than that. The unnamable is the eternally real. The thing that you cannot name. All of those emotions that you have within you that you can't describe. Anytime you said, oh, I just don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what I'm doing. Those are the things that are eternally real. Naming is the origin of particular things. I'm going to have a guest. Tori, how are you?
Good. How are you doing? Thank you for
Um,
having.
well, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So this is Tao of the Day. First, I want to check in. Are you familiar with what we do here?
No, as a matter of fact, I was just kind of browsing the channels and I was listening in, and I just had a couple questions as to certain terminology that you're using. I just wanted to know, just kind of get filled in on what the Tao is, and there's
Mhm.
questions that I have about what you're talking about in terms of, I guess, darkness. Out of darkness comes manifestation, so on and so forth.
Okay, well, this is Tao of the Day, and Tao of the Day is a program I do Monday through Friday in the morning, sometime in Central Time. And what I do is I ask people to come up and pick a number between 1 and 81. The Tao is an ancient text written 600 BC. And it consists of 81 chapters or verses, and the Tao Te Ching translates as I describe it as the canon of reason. It is a way. It is a guide to living a reasonable life. So that's what the Tao is, and the idea of manifestation being coming from darkness is because what I was kind of contemplating was this number one first chapter of the Tao, which states, I'll read it completely through for you. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. You can look at the Tao as possibly, like a god. So the God that can be told or explained is not the eternal God. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. I was looking at that as being like, once you've given something a name, you have limited its potential to being that which you are naming it. The unnamable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet, mystery and manifestation arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. So what I was doing was I read that and then I started going through it line by line. And you must have come in when I was kind of talking about manifestation and darkness, obviously. So does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. And I did have questions, but I'm interested in what you're putting together here.
Yeah. Well, why don't you? Do you have a number between 1 and 81?
Sure, let's say 60.
60. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, this one's short but sweet. So, governing a large country is like frying a small fish. You spoil it with too much poking. Center your country in the Tao, and evil will have no power. Not that it isn't there, but you'll be able to step out of its way. Give evil nothing to oppose, and it will disappear by itself. So, any initial thoughts?
Interesting. So I'm thinking about this particular text that you're reading, and the power of evil. So one way that I look at evil is evil cannot exist without an opposing opposite, which would be good. And I think that I suppose that makes sense. If there's nothing to contest evil, then it would disappear. But the question then becomes, is evil still evil? Or did we just replace evil with since it has nothing opposing it, is it now just a nameless entity because there's nothing opposing it? Or is it in nature still evil? You know what I'm saying? What do you think about that?
Well, I think immediately you have. Let's go through this line by line, and then we'll because I do think you're onto something, but I think I think there is something that I will say to that when we get there. So governing so when the Tao talks about governing a small country or governing people or other things, I always like to look at that as like your body could be a large country. Your your family could be a large country, right? Like I don't want to just because not all of us are necessarily going to govern a large country. So we have to be able to take little things away from it. So when governing a small country, it's like frying a small fish. You spoil it with too much poking. What are your thoughts there?
Well, poking, I suppose, in frying a small fish, I suppose the reason people would poke fish is to see. I mean, I would want to see if it's done yet. I would want to see the consistency, how long I still need to cook it, that kind of thing. But I suppose you can relate that to I don't know, micromanaging a country, having too
Or
much.
your body?
Yes, you're right. So
Like, right?
I think that makes sense. I think that seems.
Yeah, like when you're constantly checking in and being like, did I do this right? Is it done? Am I good? Is this okay? Is this, like you're always checking in with your mind. You're poking away. You're poking away. You're trying to figure shit out all the time, trying to judge it as to a standard. When we talk about judging, like governing a small fish, like, or governing us, not governing a small fish, but governing a large country, like that, like always kind of poking at and fixing and trying to make your citizenry do what you want them to do, then always trying to control people and put them in a box and understand them as a whole, like that can spoil your country. People can get really frustrated with having to be described as or prescribed something or described as something or expressed as something. It's like, wait, no, I am me. I am not just your constituent that you think wants this one thing, like, so that's kind of how I see that. And I think it's in line with what you were saying, pretty close. So center your country, and again, we want to look at this, on the grand and the micro scale. So center your body or your understanding of the thing that you are governing in the Tao, and evil will have no power. Now, this is when we start getting into the idea of evil. When you're governing a large country, you want to keep evil out, right?
Absolutely.
You know, um, and when you are keeping evil out, like that is amongst your citizens as well as your neighbors. And in your body, you might very well want to keep out, let's say, cancer. Cancer might be an enemy. Cancer might be evil. You might see that as evil. Thoughts?
Yes, because cancer is in direct conflict with the nature of living. I suppose it's coming against the body. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So center your country on the Tao, and evil will have no power. Big question. Like, how is this possible? Right? What does the Tao have to offer that evil will have no power? And then it states, not that it isn't there, but you'll be able to step out of its way.
Out of its way, out of what's way?
It's relating to evil. Yeah. You'll be able to step out of the way of evil.
Okay, so does that mean that we're trying to avoid it, or does that mean we're overcoming it? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, see, I think both of those things recognize evil, as a manifestation, right? That's the first part of this. That gets, this is where we start getting really sort of deeper into the understanding that, like, within you there is evil intrinsically, right? Within each of us, like, if there is good within us, there is evil within us, right? Like,
Absolutely.
so what it's saying here in terms of stepping out of its way, it's like, have you ever solved a problem before the problem arose? Have you ever noticed there's like, oh my God, if I hadn't done this 6 weeks ago, this problem would have been a bigger problem than it is right now?
Yeah, I suppose so. Sure.
Yeah. This is what centering your country in the Tao means. When you are no longer like trying to control the situation, when you're not trying to poke at your fish, but you're allowing the fish to cook, when you're allowing your country to be what it is, you will flow in this space where you'll be able to step out of the way of evil before it's had its opportunity to be evil.
Well, let me ask you something though. So with this particular Dow quote here, I think that there are a lot of assumptions that go into having this consistency with the metaphor, having that continue to work. There's a lot of assumptions that have to do with the interworkings of a country, relating that to uh, I guess light versus darkness, or I mean, I guess I can't say darkness because out of everything, according to what you're saying, out of everything comes darkness. So, I mean, I'm sorry, out of everything, everything comes out of darkness. So anyway, I don't want to get caught up in this terminology, but anyway, I'm saying there's a lot of assumptions that are being made about the the metaphor working of poking the fish.
You explain that? What are the what are the assumptions being made?
Well, okay, the first thing that I would say is there's no problem with the fish. The fish is not going to be adversely affected because it's being cooked. There's not going to be any problem with the person eating the fish if it's been poked once or 50 times. I mean, the fish is still going to.
Well, hold on. I want to express frying a small fish. Right? Once you start frying a small fish, now you start, like, every time you poke it, you are losing a great deal of percentage. It is not frying a fish. It is frying a small fish. Like if you were going to fry a sardine,
I see.
and if you poke that twice, it is gone.
Okay. So a small fish having to be related to a large country, there's a cascading. I mean, there is a big jump that we have to have where I mean, we've seen it in history. There are certain styles of government that are clearly supporting, say, a small percentage of the population having all the power, the larger percentage of the population suffering under oppression. And we can clearly see that the micromanaging aspect of that is what facilitates it. But at the same time, we can see the opposite effect of there being utter chaos and utter anarchy when there is a neglect of people's interests being represented by by those who want to have order, by those who want to have. I think that it's a really difficult thing to nail down.
And I also want to kind of point out that a very clear sort of understanding that needs to be had here is the fixing of this, right? Like what this chapter is saying is center your country in the Tao. That is a very sort of that's a very pivotal anchoring line here, and understanding what the Tao is, which I have to say is I don't believe you do because you did ask what the Tao was. So centering your country in the Tao, center your country in the Tao, and evil will have no power. And understanding that, I don't know if you're religious or not, but a lot of people would be like, have faith in God, and
I do believe in God, absolutely.
okay, so if you centered your country in God, not religion, right? Not Christianity or not Catholicism, but if you centered your country in the understanding that God's got your back, evil will have no power. Does that ring truer to you?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, again, I'm new to this whole Tao concept, so I'm not quite ready to make the connection between God and the Tao. I guess I would
Yeah,
have.
Tao is bigger than the Tao as it relates here is bigger than God.
Okay, I didn't understand that. I know my
Yeah.
time is up here, but
You can come back on if you'd like.
okay, sure. I'd like to.
Okay, yeah, I would love to have you. I love introducing people to the Tao. So yeah, we're gonna see if he comes back on. I would love that. So it's a if you are still listening, the Tao is I see the Tao at least as being bigger than God, right? I see God as kind of middle management as it relates to the God to the Tao, and that could hurt a lot of people's feelings. I don't know like how you understand God, but yeah, that's how I look at it because we have described God so much, so we understand God as being something, and as it was stating in the number one chapter, like the Tao that can be named or the God that can be named is not the eternal God. And so much of our history is trying to express and explain what God is. And the minute you try to explain what it is, you've lost the essence of what it is. Continue.
Oh, okay, yes. So I was just trying to understand more about this concept of the Tao that you were describing, and I thank you for giving me that clarification. You're saying that most people's concept, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying most people's
Mhm.
concept of God is more finite, but this Tao is superseding that. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that, and I think mainly because there's been so much written around, and there's been a lot written around the Tao. Don't get me wrong. There's been so much written and expressed around and through religions about what God is that we look at God as like being good, and we look at God as like opposing evil, and like that is
Absolutely.
so short-sighted. We see that as so short-sighted, and we see that as being something like I see that at least as being like, you know, if God can't accept gay marriage, he is less accepting than I am. So I can't give that motherfucker any respect. You know what I mean? Like if
But
God
I
can't
want you to explain that though, because I mean, rationally, if gay marriage was, and this is just one example, but if gay marriage was a more than a small percentage trend of the population, then doesn't it rationally make sense that there will be a sharp decline in the population over time?
Who cares?
What do you mean? Who cares? I don't understand that.
You don't understand. Like it just means, why does it matter that the population would decline?
Okay. I suppose I'm still trying to understand your perspective here. I was understanding this whole production to be something that facilitates the flourishing of life, but
No,
something.
no. I mean, like, life might not flourish, and that's okay.
So it's okay that life does not flourish.
Yeah,
Now, okay, let me ask you this, and I don't want to get too off topic, but just more understanding about where you're coming
yeah.
from. When I hear the word darkness, and this is kind of what drew me in, but when I hear the word darkness, I tend to associate that with negativity, with a connotation of evil, because the Bible that I'm accustomed to reading does that. God is light,
Right.
and light is what expels darkness. So when
And
darkness,
that's why God is so, and that's why God is so small, because he differentiates one from the other, where nature and the Tao is neutral. And neutrality is where you gain power.
okay, neutrality is where you gain power. I want you to
Mhm.
expound on that a little bit, please.
Everything can be used to learn and grow. If you get cancer and now you have cancer, that is an experience that you get to live, that you get to experience, that you get to have. Not everybody gets to have that experience. This is something you get to learn. This is part of your uniqueness. Now, whether you heal from that or not, that's your experience. And death is on the other side of your life. Whether that happens through cancer or old age, both of those things are the experience of the individual. Your unique strength is the life that you're living, not the life that you expect to live, but the one that's actually happening right now.
So, but what I heard you say though was uh, as if to say the goal is to learn and to grow. And to me, that suggests flourishing. But at the same time, you're saying that flourishing doesn't matter.
Well, learning and growing is flourishing. And if you learn and grow and end up being the last person on the planet, that's okay. Doesn't matter. Like, if we as individual, because what we're doing is we're contributing to the consciousness, we're contributing to the God body, right? Not physical body, but the God mind, right? We are contributing to that. And as we contribute to that, we do not need to describe these things as good or bad or right and wrong. All of that is preconceived. All of that is reaching for understanding. But being here is beyond understanding.
One thing that I like to do when I am investigating different schools of thought, different ideologies, and this is something that I recently learned with my own quote unquote religion, but I don't classify myself as religious, but with my own upbringing in Christianity, um, this is something that I recently had to discipline myself to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I've had to do is look at my practical life and see how it corresponds to that which I am adopting as a I guess train of thought from religion, train of thought, and I have to be honest with myself. So this is what I'm trying to do the same thing with what you're saying. So in
Mm-hmm.
my practical life, it doesn't make sense for me to go to work every day if I don't have a goal in mind to procure safety, security, a household, a home for my family, to attain certain luxuries, certain privileges, certain uh, um, entitlements. I mean, so there is a definite thing that I'm reaching for, and I think that life basically would not would we would not understand life to be anything if there is no positive goal that we're reaching for. And I think that the very definition of darkness and negativity is by general consensus of the entire world going against what what people generally get out of bed in the morning to attempt to achieve every day. Can you kind of can you kind of comment to that?
Yeah, I think that's all driven by fear. Like, if people get out of bed to achieve a goal, they are missing the point of their life. I think if people get out of bed to reach a goal, that goal defines who they are. And that's not true. You being here is enough. And you're worthy of love, and you're worthy of having, and you're worthy of receiving without having to get out of bed only because you have to achieve something.
Let me ask you: do you have children?
No.
I believe. I mean, this is. I don't mean to be. I don't.
No, no, no. I know where you're going with this. Go on.
If you happen to have children, then perhaps your opinion would change. And basically,
You're
when you
right. If I had children, I would surround myself with more fear. You're
okay, but
absolutely right.
let me ask you: what is fear a neutral topic or is fear negative?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. Fear is neutral. In your respects, it's negative.
Yeah, I absolutely see fear as negative. I absolutely see fear as an enemy. So
Yes, you
I would
have to. The Tao also states to have an enemy is to be an enemy. That is a quote from the Tao. Just so you can hold on to that.
okay, but is that necessarily wrong though? I mean, does the Tao define
If you want to be an enemy, that's fine. It's absolutely okay. If you
again?
want enemies, then be an enemy all you want.
It
There's no,
seems,
there's no, it's not right or wrong. There is no right and wrong. Like, that's the whole point.
but why does the Tao make a distinction? Why does the Tao go through the trouble of making a distinction when it seems to be futile anyway between right and
Well,
wrong?
it's this. Well, the distinction exists, and it is recognizing the distinction, right?
But
Center
why,
yourself in the Tao, and evil will have no power. Not that it isn't there, but you'll be able to step out of its way. Give evil nothing to oppose, and it will disappear by itself.
okay, again, if it doesn't matter, then why? And this is my problem. It's like a lot of trouble going into something that becomes inconsequential. You know, I don't understand. So if there's a difference between light and darkness, this is the way the human eye works. The human eye would go blind if all it sees is white paint. Like for the example of I believe in Mexico years ago. There was some type of, and just bear with me, but there was some type of government situation where they decided to paint everything white, and then people's eyes started losing the ability to discern white from darkness because all they're getting, all the stimuli they had is just white. So with contrast, it's important to be able to navigate through your environment. So there's a function behind contrast. And what I'm trying to decide is this Tao facilitating the function that we need for life, or is it just going to dismiss it all because it's uncomfortable with people having a position about good and bad?
Oh, now although I would consider myself a scholar of the Tao, even though I haven't studied it professionally or anything. I've been, going through the Tao for 15 years or so. Um, I would, like it's interesting because so much of your assumptions lie in the manifestation, right? The idea of the human eye. And, there are plenty of blind people that can navigate the world just fine. And what is wrong with being blind? Like, why is that? Why is that something that for you is something that is not
Oh,
not acceptable?
it's very simple. If you look at the human body, it is a machine that is fine tuned. Very. If you look at every element of this body, um, every component not only serves a purpose, but it serves it in such a manner that is in perfect balance, or I would say that is very efficiently facilitating how we function in life, and that is a that's a quantifiable measurement that it's out of the realm of just abstract or just philosophical. You can actually quantify.
No, this isn't philosophical. And I think we have to recognize the idea that, like, the frontal lobe, which is the area which, you're experiencing most of the manifestation, um, is very young and it defends itself quite a bit. And I
That's an
see, what's that?
that's an assumption of evolution right there. The frontal lobe is young. That's an assumption that we
Well,
have.
well, it is. I mean, it's only really started to kind of take effect in the human body over the last 4,000 years.
Again, you're assuming that. I don't think that's scientifically based.
Okay, you can look it up, but I mean, I can if you want to connect with me on Instagram, I can send you some articles. I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Um, so the gut brain, right? Your reptilian brain and your heart brain, your limbic brain. These are brains that are much older, and these are brains that have much more sort of like so. And I don't know your relationship with science and the body, but like there is a cluster of neurological cells in your stomach, and there's a cluster of neurological cells in your heart.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so this is your gut brain and heart brain. These are very old, right? These have access to information, and so time doesn't exist as I'm sure you're familiar. So the gut
I,
brain has access to much more information than the heart brain, and the heart brain has access to much more information than the head brain, your frontal lobe. Your
hmm,
frontal lobe is something that created, so the frontal lobe does something, right? The frontal lobe does a very specific thing. And if we look at these brains, and you can come back on if you'd like. So I'm going to explain the three brains for you just as we understand it, right? So the gut brain allowed us to survive as beings way back when. And this is before Homo sapiens sapien, right, at the dawn of time, kind of thing. This is helped us survive, pushed us to the limit, kept us pushing ourselves forward through the experience. Then we moved into relationships. Now, relationships, what ended up happening with relationships once we started getting into the heart brain, the limbic brain sort of realm, we started building, families, communities, things like that. But they were still nomadic. They were still, but they were together. They bound together. They we started planting things, but not farming. Farming came with the onset of the frontal lobe, because the frontal lobe is the only part of the brain system that could have imagined the organization of the world, right? So our economic system, once again, very young relatively to our experience. The education system, very young to our experience. All of the systems that we have today that you are claiming are the things that we need to uphold are really relatively less than 4,000 years old. Most of these things, and very young. Like, and we did so much better before then. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of years of existence without. the frontal lobe, without education the way we understand it, without your job, without, right, like without all of those things that you say are essential to life, actually are very, very young and don't really have any bearing whatsoever to do on life. It only has to do with the system that was created. And when we talk about the Tao, we say, okay, well, we want to be centered in the Tao. And we are currently not. We are currently centered in our systems. And our systems have created things like fear to the extent that now everybody defends. Have you ever heard of Stockholm Syndrome?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Okay, that is what I would if you and I were talking, I would be like, you might want to look at that. You might want to look at the fact that you're defending the thing that is taking from you and the thing that is giving you fear. The thing that is causing you the most fear is the thing that you're defending. And
But
that is interesting to me.
I would have to accept that the fear is what my motivation is, and that's what you're insisting is the case.
Well, that's what you said.
Uh, so when someone gets out of the bed in the morning in order to go to work every day to procure a life for their family, I think that you're suggesting that that's fear, and that's I'm not saying that.
If that is the reason you're going, because you need to make your life, like, if you're getting up to go to work because you love the work you do, because you are like in line with who you are, because you are like enthused about doing what you do, that's one thing. But when you're saying, I need to make a life for my kids, and if I don't go to work, that won't happen, then that's fear. Yeah. I would definitely say that's coming from a fear.
Well, just to be like again, what I usually do with certain challenges to my thought process is later in my life. Now, like I said before, I have to start challenging some of the belief systems that I've had, and what I do is I relate it to practicality. So in practicality, I know
Mhm.
fear is. If I see a ferocious, you know, dog, say 15 feet in front of me as I'm walking down the street, then I understand fear, what fear is. However, if I see, say, a little child who's about to walk in front of a oncoming car, I'm not afraid of the child as I would be afraid of the dog. I'm afraid that the child might get hurt. But see, I'm so fear would paralyze me with the dog, but fear motivates me with the child. And
Mhm.
so what I understand is in practicality, the motivation of me getting out of bed in the morning is not the same as the motivation of, I'm gonna, like, say if I were a slave and I didn't get up and pick this cotton every morning, then the master would slash my back. I mean, I would be afraid then. That would be my motivation versus me out of what I would characterize as out of a responsibility, out of love, out of I have an obligation to protect. Now, see, I want to just make sure I walk the line of distinguishing what I'm describing to you before we just cast that generalization of the word fear on everything.
Yeah, I mean, you look at fear as being a very different thing. Like again, I can't speak to that. I mean, I can't speak to how you define it. I would define it as I would define your actions as being fear based, and I would define your description of how one should live their life as fear based. I
Let
would
me
do that. Like,
um,
and I am doing that because, like, you're saying, like, I have an obligation to my family, and I was like, really, not really. I mean, you have decided to be obliged to your family in these ways, and you're right. I don't have children. I had a vasectomy when I was 26. That was 40 years ago or 20 years ago, and and because I knew that I didn't want children,
So you're
and I didn't.
then I'm
What's
45.
that?
I'm 45.
Yeah,
You're
we're the same age. I'm 46.
this is an interesting dynamic here. Let me ask you something, if I may.
Hmm.
Um, are you familiar with the term circular reasoning?
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I ask you that is because again, I'm trying to identify my thoughts. I'm trying to get some grounding to what I say I believe in. And my part of
Hmm.
my exercise is challenging my own thought process and looking at my own limitations, my own mandatory limitations. And one thing that I understand is I cannot prove my own existence. And if I were attempt to prove it, then it's mandatory circular reasoning. And what circular reasoning is proving something by presupposing it already to be true. So the only reason I can prove that I'm talking to you right now is by presupposing that I'm talking to you right now. So it's kind of like you know, it's there's no way that I can escape the
Circular reasoning. No,
the
I get you.
there's no way. It's like I'm a slave to it.
So here's something else that the Tao states.
Oh, go ahead.
Wise men don't need to prove their point. Men who need to prove their point aren't wise. Like I don't have to prove that I exist.
But
Whether I do or not doesn't matter. I'm still like I'm having an experience at this
so
moment.
so a fundamental question then becomes, why give so much credence to this entity called the Tao if it seems to discredit itself? Where
I haven't seen it discredit itself.
no, I'm saying the point is, if the Tao is giving you so many precepts that are absolutes, but it's saying in its precepts, it's saying the absolutes are unnecessary, isn't it discrediting itself?
No, no, I don't think so. It's saying like the precepts, right? Like the manifestation is part of the experience. The space that the manifestation holds is part of the experience. Neither are neither can they can't exist separately, and they are only here to complete the experience. So we are here, we are living, we are both God and we are separate beings, right? We are God connected to all things and we are separate beings. That's a paradox. That's a paradox inherent in the system, in just the experience of living, that we are connected. You and I were connected, spiritually well before we were ever connected on wisdom. We didn't
But
know that,
but
but it was there.
but does it matter to you that according to the Tao that you just read to me, any attempt to prove what you just said will nullify it or will disannul it? Doesn't
No. Like it is true. I've seen it. I know this to be true in my life.
but according to the
Right?
Tao,
I've not according to the Dow, just I mean, so I have 20 years clean and sober tomorrow. 21 tomorrow. I have
oh, congrats.
21 years clean and sober tomorrow.
I
And
mean,
so a large aspect of this of my sobriety does come from, does have to do with the Tao. It has helped me understand my life. But I have seen, as I follow my heart, like I asked you a little while ago, like, can you sidestep a problem just by being in tune? And that's what it's saying here. When you center your country in the Tao, when you center your body in the Tao, when you center your life in being rather than doing, everything gets done.
this is an interesting
And
con um one thing that
I do know that.
I'm sorry I cut you off. Were you about to say something?
No, 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 no. Please continue.
One thing that I recently realized also is some of the belief systems that I've had, in which I actually align with what you just got finished saying about having the ability to sense or detect your surroundings by way of tuning in or frequencies. One thing that I understand about frequencies is that we are driven by frequencies in science. You know, the eardrum, the eye, uh, even everything that we touch, everything that we will ever see or touch or feel has resonant frequencies that we interact with on a fundamental basis. And so it makes sense that I can feel certain things about my surroundings based on a scientific premise. And so that confirms a lot of the spiritual things that I understand, that I know, that I believe. And again, this was my study that I had to do recently with just reconciling what I say I believe with what practically works in life. So I wanted to just let you know that I'm not dismissing everything that you're saying,
No, no, no,
but
no.
I think that there is truth here. I just want to challenge some of the, what I would say, some of the things that seem to be centered around duplicity, where you have to subscribe to something that disannuls itself whenever you attempt to posture yourself like with it, you know, and that
Well,
doesn't.
it starts like I think that starts with the assumption that the person had, like, I'm not disavowing, like, I have a diagnosis of MS. I was bedridden for 2 months. I'm fine now, but like that can come back at any time. I know there may very well be a time in my life where I'll be crippled, and you know what? It was the best thing that's ever happened to me.
MS was the best thing that ever happened to you?
Yep. Because
Wow.
it tightened up my, it gave me a reason to like be quiet. It gave me a reason to like change my diet, and like loving yourself through a chronic illness, loving yourself through an illness that can take everything from you,
But
and
the
understanding that I embrace MS. MS is not my enemy.
but the problem is using words like best. It alludes to there being a well-defined difference between good and bad, which you're suggesting by this
You're
that.
right. It was yet another experience in my life that got me to understand myself in a deeper way. That's probably like it is if we are in once again we are in an experience of manifestation, right? I don't deny that. I'm not trying to say, but it's not bad, right? It's not a judgment. It is an experience. And through that experience, I get to not judge it. I get to be here present with it, and I get to love it as it is.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. I want
Me
you to.
too. And I'm really sorry that I have a 9 o'clock talk on Clubhouse that I'm going to be doing, so I can't continue to to have you join this conversation. But I
Okay,
really appreciate your being here.
absolutely. I really and I will probably see if I can find you on Clubhouse, but I'm not gonna hog it. I'll let someone else talk.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be in the inner room, and we're going to be talking about recovery and stuff. So.
All right,
All right. My
that's great.
best to you, man. I really appreciate you coming on and talking the Dow.
Great. Yeah, man. Absolutely. I want you to have a great day.
You too, brother. Okay. That was a lot of fun. I really love talking about the Dow, especially when we talk about the Dow in its entirety, not just individual, not just individual chapters. But I want each and every one of you to love yourself a little more today, because there's always more. There's always more. We are sitting here in a manifestation. We are experiencing the manifestation, and we can't just sit on a cushion every day and do that. But we have to be present with ourselves. We have to make sure that we're being present here now and listening, paying attention, and just being here where we are. This is a Recover Yourself production. I'm your host, Martin John. And as always, until next time, keep recovering yourself.